Another week, Beacon Hill Podcast. I'm here with Joel Betts.
What's going on?
Good to see you, Joel. It's early. Not like super early.
We're recording this at 5 a.m.
It's earlier than we normally do the podcast. We usually do it the afternoon. It's the morning. My coffee is like halfway down. So I'm not sure, they're probably not going to get the quality that they usually get on here.
I have high hopes. I'm a little sleepy after lunch. Lunch gets me a little dozy. So I'm ready to go.
Okay. Well, you can shoulder the load today. Jake, how are you doing? He's off screen here.
I'm doing all right.
Yeah?
Finally getting over a cold, so.
Yeah, you've been whining about that all week.
Yeah. I like to milk it.
Sometimes you got to.
Well, this morning, Joel, you've got kind of a fun icebreaker question for us. We're talking about kind of the general topic of stewardship and taking care of what God has loaned us. Sunday, I preached a message called How to Be Rich or How to Be Rich Toward God. And so the question today that you've prepared for us is if each of us had $1,000, but we had to spend it on each other. The word you said or the phrase you said was to spend generously on one another.
Yeah.
So that means we spend the whole thing.
The whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you buy for the other person? Now, since this was your question, I feel like you've thought a lot about this.
I wouldn't say a lot, but I've thought some about it.
Okay.
I thought some about it. I didn't spend to the last cent. Like it's general.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure it would get to $1,000.
Now, are we going to set some parameters around what this can be? Like, for instance, I was thinking about this. Are we going to, insinuate insults back and forth? Like, for instance, you're going to spend $500 for me a new wardrobe, or for me some hair piece or something because I'm thinning out.
No, when I thought generous, I thought it would be something that you'd enjoy.
Okay.
You'd like that would
Gotcha.
build you up.
Okay.
Not tear you down.
I just didn't know what to expect here because I told you that I wanted you to go first because I was still thinking on mine.
It's 100% indicting that you are.
Well, here's the thing.
You thought of.
I'm going last
now.
for a reason because if he comes with the bullets, I'm gonna fire back.
I'm scared now.
So you can play nice, or we can just go at it.
Well, here, let me go.
Wait, are we gonna popcorn this and kind of go back and forth, or are we gonna say the whole $1,000 up front so that way I can be ready, depending on what angle you come at with this?
Sure. It sounds like you need more time, so let me just get into what I got for you. All right.
Was that an insult already?
Well, now it is. I feel I come into this podcast with an open heart.
Okay.
And if you can go back again and again, and I'm put on the defensive every opening. But here we go. This is a personal thing, all right? So I'm not going to out you because I don't know if you want to be outed. But I looked
I'm nervous, Jake.
An artist that you like.
Wait. Hang on. You said you looked?
I looked.
Where did you look?
Online. No, I know you like this artist. I looked online.
Okay.
And
I thought you meant that there was some place online that shows the artists that I like. And I'm like, I don't remember filling something out.
He looks on your MySpace
I know
page.
you like this artist, but
I'm already nervous, man.
And they're in Nashville.
The artist is in Nashville?
Like they're doing a concert in Nashville coming up soon. So I would buy you and Hillary tickets to this concert that this artist is putting on.
I'm supposed to know who that is?
No, but sometimes people, he's not necessarily a Christian artist.
Is he a Christian?
I just put it in the chat.
Oh, yeah. You can say that. I'll say it. Ben Rector.
Okay, Ben Rector. He's going to be in Nashville.
Yeah.
I would buy you and Hillary Ben Rector tickets.
He's a I like his music. We're going to his concert in a couple months.
I'm not saying it's bad. Just some people don't want their musical tastes out there just like that.
I'm not ashamed of that.
Okay. All right.
I'm not ashamed of that.
See, I'm just trying to protect you.
So here's a question, though. How big did you go on the tickets? Like, are we doing the VIP?
This isn't like almost an opera house. So you're getting the $250 per
now here's
box seat.
Time out. So this says you spend it on me.
Yeah.
Not me and my wife.
You're one flush.
Dang, he's getting technical, man.
Got him.
So but I'm thinking that's $250, not $500.
I'm just saying. I'm trying
like
to look
I need
out
some
for
more.
You want to go by yourself?
No.
I thought you'd have more fun with your wife. But if you want me to cut her out, I will.
I'm just saying
this is me being generous.
She can have her own $1,000.
Okay. All
right. What do you think, Joel or Jake? What do you think we should do about this? So if I buy you a gift and I say, "Man, this is your Christmas gift," and half of it's for Monica, does it count?
I think if it's tickets, you get somebody 2 tickets. Like I'm not going to get like if I get Joel tickets to a Louisville basketball game, I'm not going to be like, "Here, Joel," and give him 1 ticket.
Okay.
Like you give 2 tickets, and then you do whatever you want with them. If you want to go by yourself and scalp the other one, like go for it.
Okay.
Goodness gracious.
So I'm thinking you and your wife.
This gift thing is revealing your heart,
man. Your boys.
Crazy.
I'm thinking you and your wife and your boys Ben Rector tickets for $250 a piece. That's a full 1,000.
I'm not taking
I'm
my
done.
boys. Well, there you go.
Yeah, that's not a gift for anybody.
It's revealing my heart in the morning before I have my coffee, you know?
Yeah.
Like I drink my coffee before I come to church usually.
Yeah.
So
if you preached without your coffee, everybody's getting called out.
There's a reason people do their Bible study with their coffee. You know, it tenderizes their heart.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
All right.
And then
what's next?
And then I would buy you. You'd also get a hotel with that, right? Mm-hmm. And then the next night, a dinner and magic show in Nashville.
Who's the magician?
Looked up this place called House of Cards.
Uh-huh.
So whoever's there that night.
Okay.
David Blaine.
I'll take it.
And then whatever's left after that, I'm buying you some Starbucks gift cards, which are more important than I would have thought before this, right? Well, now I can see those are important. And then if there's anything left after that, I'm buying you those jars of the sausages that you like.
What, pickled bologna?
Yeah, the pickled bologna.
Okay. Did I ever get you all to try that?
No.
Did you, Jake?
No, I don't think so. I'll try.
I'm gonna bring some in. We'll do the taste test on here like we did the watermelon and stuff.
I'll try mustard on watermelon, but I ain't trying pickled bologna.
Would you try it if I brought it in?
Yeah, just for the.
All right, we're gonna do it. Now they have. Before I go on into what I would do, they have like a spicy version and just a regular bologna version.
Mm-hmm.
I like the regular bologna version because it's like a little firmer on the texture. But the spicy version's good too. But it's a lot going on in the flavor department. I mean, you can imagine.
Sure.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
You have a whole like curated taste test thing with this though, right? Like I think
what do you mean?
I think one time you told me like you got to get the bologna and then you get this type of cracker.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, no, not but if you get the bologna, the cracker, the cheese, and like pickles or something on the side.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically a charcuterie plate at that point.
Pretty much.
The redneck charcuterie board.
Exactly. All right. What would I do? So here's the thing. I was thinking on the $1,000. I don't know how far this goes. I don't know the market these days on Pokemon cards.
Okay. It's not great right now.
It's not. Okay. Well, then what would $250 worth of Pokemon cards look like?
I don't know.
Would that get you through a game or two?
I don't know.
Yeah, I thought that was your thing, man.
You and I played that app, but
yeah.
I've never played
a
real life game.
Okay.
In person.
Yeah, let's do it. $250 in Pokemon cards.
All right.
I'm thinking another $250 on some tennis shoes. They have to be Adidas.
Yeah, I like shoes.
And you can, I don't know what that'll get you.
Get you a lot.
Would you buy like a brand new pair, or would you buy like a collectible used pair?
Oh, I'd buy a brand new pair.
Okay. Do they even make $250 Adidas?
They do. I don't think I would,
You'd be on Preachers and Sneakers.
That's right.
Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't seen that, have you seen that?
Yeah, I think so.
It's like pastors who wear lavish sneakers and stuff.
$1,000 sneakers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's $500.
That's $500.
Then I would get you and Leslie a trip.
Nice.
We're going to Louisville.
A $500 trip.
We're going to Louisville, and we're gonna get tickets to watch the Cardinals play.
Nice.
And they're gonna play Duke.
That'd be awesome.
Is that for him and Leslie?
Yeah,
or me
it's for him
Joel?
and Leslie. And that'll be about $250 for those tickets.
Yeah.
Probably upper level. But
yeah,
you got to save room for the hotel.
I might. Oh, yeah. With hotel, I'm only getting in the upper
Going
level.
to the Galt House.
That's a cool place.
Can we do that for $250?
Just the room?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know. We'll back off the Pokemon cards a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
We'll do $125.
Nice.
And that'll get you. Let's do $50 of Pokemon.
Okay.
And then we'll do the Galt House, and then you can go to Jeff Ruby's.
Ooh.
By yourself.
By myself.
Because I don't think you have the budget to take Leslie.
That's fine.
Or you could send her.
We'll split something.
Okay.
Ruby
That's a nice.
Ruby Tuesdays.
That's a nice thing. So you guys are going to the Galt House.
Yeah.
You're going to go to dinner. You're going to go to the game. And then you get to play Pokemon.
Dude, that was generous of you.
Mm-hmm. And I did that on the fly. I didn't know what we were doing here. I thought you might have set me up for something.
I know that's me.
You were
that's
generous.
Who I am. Constantly just gotchas and getting you.
I feel like
I can't believe you spent some of his money on Leslie. That's ridiculous.
It's crazy.
I had to get him back,
Wow.
All right.
Well, I feel rich after that.
That's great,
Filled
man.
Up.
What are we even doing here? Luke 12. I don't. Let me look here.
I will say the small talk in the morning is on point.
Well, that's good. Luke 12, starting in verse 13. I won't read the whole passage because we did quite a few verses on Sunday, but basically this idea of stewardship continues through that. Jesus was talking about. Well, let me just go back. When he was talking about fear God and not man, he mentions not to be afraid. You're worth more than many sparrows. And then he goes on to talk about standing up for him. But then he brings up the idea of stewardship and someone who basically lives for the here and now versus someone who lives for the future. And he teaches a parable about this rich guy who has a lot of stuff and basically wants to, because he's greedy, he wants to keep it all for himself. And so he tears down his barns and builds bigger ones just so he can store all of his stuff. And then at the end of everything, it says in verse 20, God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life is demanded of you, and the things you've prepared, whose will they be?" This is how it is with the one who stores up treasures for himself and is not rich toward God. And we're talking about being rich toward God there. And the disciples are standing there, and Jesus turns to them and says for them not to worry. And the reason they shouldn't worry is God's going to take care of them. But instead of worrying, he tells them, verse 31, "But seek his," that's God's, "kingdom, and these things will be provided for you," talking about their needs, essentially. And he says, "Don't be afraid, little flock, because your Father delights to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Make money bags for yourselves that won't grow old, an inexhaustible treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So a few things here that I brought out Sunday with the idea of like that Jesus brings up here, how to be rich, or being rich toward God. And so what does it look like to be rich toward God versus being rich from a worldly perspective? And one of the things I mentioned was to be rich toward God, we're to steward well what God has loaned us. And I think that last part is really important, just as important as the first part. It's this mindset that everything we have is on loan from God. It's not ours, essentially. Like, even though we may feel like we've worked for it, or we deserve it, or whatever the case may be, we have to realize that everything is on loan from God. And when we think of the things that are on loan from God, we're not just talking about money. I know the context here in some ways, because Jesus mentions make money bags for yourselves that won't grow old. It does include money, but it also includes all of our possessions, because he's talking about the barns, the crops, all of those kind of things. And he says, sell your possessions and give to the poor. So it includes the materialistic things that aren't monetary. It also includes, I think we could expand this to our time and our giftings and all of those things that God has given us, because that's on loan as well. Like, none of us are promised tomorrow. And so in thinking about that, what are some things that we can do to help remind ourselves and to actually put into action, like treating all of this stuff God has given us as first and foremost as the Lord's, and it's just been given on loan to us to manage or to steward, and not as ours? What are some things that just practically speaking can help us with that? Because I think it's very easy to get in the mindset, well, I went to work and earned that paycheck, or I'm the one who went to school and got this career, or whatever we want to say with all of that. What are your thoughts on that, Joel, on some things that can help us stay in that right mindset?
I think it's important that we just look at our mindset at all. The kind of the default of all of us before we know Christ is to put ourselves as, kings or queens of our lives, right? That it's all about us. It's all about what we want and everything. So our default when we treat money, belongings, opportunities will be towards that, selfish desires. So just sitting back, instead of being on autopilot, and when we're on autopilot, we're going to probably act selfishly in our own interests or in the interests of our family or something like that. But sitting back and saying, this is what the Lord has given me. What can I do to build his kingdom with that? Or even, not even only building his kingdom, but saying, like, what can I do with this money to grow closer to God, or to do something for my family, in the sense of, we can take a vacation, and vacations are good. But instead of taking a vacation and just saying, how can I just spend all this on myself. Why are we taking this vacation? And it could be, I'm going to take this vacation so I can rest up, so that I can pour into my family, and when I come back, so that I can be refreshed to continue to serve and to work hard for the Lord's glory. That's just a mindset shift. You know, you're probably doing the same things on that vacation that you would if you hadn't thought about it at all. But just thinking about, why am I taking these opportunities? Why am I spending my money this way or that way? Why am I buying this thing? And seeing, is this something that I'm using for myself, or am I using it for God's glory?
And I think our culture just inundates us with messages that make us self-centered. There are a lot of advertising campaigns, and just, you know, I was thinking when you mentioned, I think you mentioned something about kings and queens and that kind of thing. I was thinking about Burger King. Popped in my head. You know,
have it your way.
Yeah, have it your way. It's all about us.
Mm-hmm.
When's the last time you had a Whopper?
It's been a little while.
Jake?
It's been a minute.
When's the last time you had Burger King?
I think I've had like the breakfast in the last like couple years.
Breakfast?
Yeah, the croissant sandwich.
Let me tell you something I've never had at Burger King.
Breakfast.
Yeah.
I don't think I've had a Whopper. I mean, it may have been 10 years.
That's what we need to do. Whopper versus Big Mac versus something else. A little taste test.
Whopper and pickled bologna.
Sounds like a party.
I'm hungry today, I guess. So in all seriousness, though, I think we're inundated with that type of messaging, and it gets us in the mindset of like, hey, you know, we want, you know, or deserve all of these things. I think another thing that kind of slips us into a slippery slope of not necessarily a mindset of thinking that it's everything is ours, but maybe a mindset of greed, or just I don't know. Do you feel like, I was trying to think of another word for this. Do you feel like greed, it is an opposite of contentment, but is there another word besides greed that would be an opposite to contentment? Like if you don't feel greedy, but you're just not satisfied. I don't know. Do you know, Jake? They call you the walking dictionary. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, but it's like somebody went in and like ripped out a bunch of pages. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you all have heard, there's this new thing called Google.
Okay.
That might tell us how would I phrase this? What is a word that means the opposite of content?
An antonym.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Antonym. Okay. Oh, discontent.
Yeah.
There's that word.
Yeah.
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 There is discontent.
Yeah, that comes to mind.
Man, Jake, where were you when we needed you, man?
We are 3 college-educated people.
And people at home are thinking discontent. Why is he not thinking of discontent?
They're probably like, why am I listening to these guys?
Just a second. Let me take another sip of this coffee. Now I know discontent.
Yeah.
So discontent. So here's the thing. I don't think discontent is necessarily the same as greed, but I do think they're related. My point was this. I think that different things like apps and ads that we get all the time can sow that discontentment in us, where we might not even like be intending to buy something or look for something or whatever, but we pull up that Amazon app or the Walmart app or whatever you use, and just browsing on there can make you discontent or can make you maybe lean into, and again, maybe it's maybe it does sow greed into our lives in some ways. I think another thing that we have to think of when it comes to greed that is a real reality today, and it's super easy and advertised to us all the time, is like the sports betting and sports gambling. You know, they have tons of apps, and you can't even watch sports today without being advertised, even in the game itself, not like at the breaks. And that's one of the things, like it might start as, oh, well, they're giving me a free $15 to bet or whatever, and so I'm not actually spending any money, and so I'm going to get that and bet that, and then that's what they do to get you hooked, and the next thing you know, like that discontentment or greed or whatever, and just, I'll say in some ways, like the addiction side of it as well can really take over and cause us to get to a point that we're not stewarding well what God has loaned us. I mean, we load things in that app, or we spend money on different things that we don't need, and just kind of waste away things that we should be making smarter decisions with. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I also think if someone wants to look at how can I look at the things that I have as not being my own, how can I make being generous or giving to God a priority? I think the kind of the principle of first fruits, of like, when Abel brought his sacrifice and it was the choicest and the best of his brand new flock. This idea of bringing to God, not just the best of what you had, but bringing to God what you have first, versus, maybe the leftovers. It's a temptation for me. I look a lot at our budgeting in our home and stuff, and it's a temptation for me of like, let's get all of these expenses done, and then whatever's left over at the end of the month, then I'll kind of give to some things after that. But when it comes to giving to God, I think, when that paycheck comes in, I think it's a good principle of, let's give to God whatever that amount that you believe that God is calling you to give. Give that first, and let everything else take care of itself after.
Yeah, and speaking of budgeting, maybe next year you could think about putting $1,000 in there for pastor appreciation,
sure,
something like that. And
I don't know. It sounds like you wouldn't trust it if I gave it to you. You'd be like, what is this blood money or something?
So, in thinking about that though, the budgeting side, and we'll get into this probably a little bit more in a minute, but I do think it's important. Like, a lot of people set up reoccurring gifts and things like that, and I don't want to just talk about giving to the church, although I do think that's important, giving to your local church. But just giving in general, I think if we're going to do that off the top, one of the things, benefits about doing that kind of a reoccurring thing, is it establishes like, hey, I'm giving this like just straight out, no matter what my bills look like and things like that. Now, that being said, I do want to talk for just a second about the importance of, I think, stewardship. You also have the side of not just giving, and we're going to talk about giving generously more in just a second. I think we're getting a little bit ahead on that. But that being said, you have the important part of providing for your family and your needs and things like that, because God has given you the things that you have, not just to give away every single thing, but you look at the whole of Scripture and we see that is given to provide for us as well. Like when you take the context of Luke 12, for example, if you take the idea of like, okay, God's going to provide your needs. He's going to give you, if you go back to look at what Jesus says, he gives the example of the ravens and Solomon, the flowers as compared to Solomon and all of that. And then he says in verse 32, don't be afraid, because your Father delights to give you the kingdom. So like he's saying, hey, like God is in charge of everything. He owns everything. He's going to provide your needs. And then he says, sell your possessions and give it to the poor. Make money bags for yourselves that won't grow. Like, so if you take this in context, you could say, well, is he saying like the stuff that God gives you to provide your needs, you're to sell that too, and then you don't have anything after that? And that's not the case. Like God's providing our needs to take care of us and those things, but we are called to be generous. And I think it's interesting I read 1 Timothy 6, 10 on Sunday. It says, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, and by craving it, some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." So you have this idea that to watch out for greed and to be very careful, because it could actually cause you to stray from the Lord because you're seeking that instead of the Lord. But just a few chapters later, or a few verses before, in 1 Timothy 5:8, it says, "If anyone does not provide for his own family, especially for his own household, he's denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." So in that same letter, just a few verses before, it says we're called to provide for our families and to take care of them. But at the same time, we watch out for greed and the love of money and making sure that we're generous people. And so in saying that, like, what are some thoughts that we can share with folks about how do you balance that? How do you balance, like, the importance of providing for your family, maybe having a savings account, thinking about the future? I do think stewardship includes preparing for the future in some ways, and not just throwing caution to the wind. But how do we do that versus, like, balance hoarding wealth? I think for me, some of the root has to come down to, like, where your heart is in that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. Where, a lot of the times in the Bible, even, we see the Pharisees' problem wasn't even some of the actions they were taking. It all had to do with their motive and heart behind the action. And the same thing is, are we saving and growing our wealth, or investing in certain things? So some people do that as their wealth grows, that they're able to give more, or help more, or have opportunities. There's plenty of people that I know that saved their retirement big, and I knew a couple that once they retired, they used all that to go and be full-time missionaries as in their retirement, right? But they worked hard and saved all that so that they could have the freedom to also take care of their family, but also to be able to do this mission work they felt the Lord was calling them to. And I think there's a difference in, saving and doing that versus I'm saving because I'm scared. What if the market crashes, or what if I lose my job, or what if the economy gets really hard, or something like that, and I have to, hoard just in case. And it's more of a control thing or something like that, or fear or anxiety driven. And it's really the heart behind what are we trying to do with the savings.
Yeah, and I think as we consider the future, one of the things that we can also consider is if we're at a place that we're saving for our retirement and things like that, and thinking about what's going to happen with our estate and everything else, like when we pass, you can even build into, like, your will or whatever you want to do to give some of that as well. And so if you're thinking, well, I'm just saving all this for the future, and I don't know how that's going to look or whatever. I mean, my hope is, and this is kind of what I'm thinking too, like, if I get to the point one day that I retire and I'm, my income is coming from retirement or whatever, my intention is to try to be generous with that as well, because, like, when I'm looking at it now, I'm like, okay, well, I'm saving for the future and I'm not giving anything out of that. But the intent is to give out of that in the future. And so I think that's another thing to think about, like, as you save, not just thinking about, well, I'm just going to save it all for myself, but saving some or thinking about, like, hey, I can be generous with this as I get older. And so there are a lot of different thoughts in that. I do think that we have to inspect our hearts and judge our hearts as to why we're doing this. But we don't want to be, like, frivolous and just throw caution to the wind and not even care about stuff. God has given us wisdom, and we need to act in that. And we try to do that as a church as well. Like, as people give, we want to make sure we have some money in the bank to take care of unexpected expenses and things like that. And we do that collectively as a church, and I think we should do that as individuals as well. But but make sure our hearts are pure in how we're saving our money and how we're using those things. Another thing that I mentioned on Sunday that Jesus points out here, obviously, in order to be rich toward God, we have to prioritize seeking the Lord. He says, but seek his kingdom, and these things will be provided for you. If you look at other Gospels, it talks about like seeking first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Matthew tells us that in his Gospel. And thinking about that, like in prioritizing seeking the Lord, obviously we live in a busy culture. I think families are busier than they've ever been. And that probably extends to senior adults too in some ways, because as the family gets busy, you get busy with the grandkids and things like that. You got more ball games to go to, maybe stuff to do than we used to. And I think, back in the day, and I remember this even when I was a kid, but I know it was more before that time. I grew up in the 90s, but even before that time, the church was like the epicenter of the community in a lot of ways. And so churches would have like just tons of programs, tons of activities, and almost something to go to every night or at least multiple times during the week. And I think as the family has gotten busier, churches have realized, man, it's really hard to get families to come back multiple times. And like, when I grew up, we had Sunday night service, and we had like a Monday night visitation, and we had, youth events, once a month or something, just different things going on. Whereas now it's very hard, especially with families, to get people to come that often, because to be honest, there's just a lot of things competing. But then not only that, like, because it's so busy, any downtime you get as a family is just like, man, we don't get this very often. And so with the busyness that we all have, I think it becomes harder and harder to prioritize seeking the Lord. And I don't want to be legalistic about this and say the only way we seek the Lord is by coming to church. And we've got to prioritize every time the church doors are open that we've got to be here. Now, I will say, certainly I think the more that we are at church, the more benefit it has to our lives, because the community of believers around us are super important. And the more we can get into the Word together and worship together, that's important. But, this past Sunday, I mentioned how even hobbies and sports and stuff can come against, that time. And so how do you set priorities on those things? Because it was funny. I told Hillary, my wife, this is exactly how things work. So Jack's a pitcher in baseball, and I mentioned this Sunday, and Wednesday night they had practice just for pitchers and catchers, and it was the first time that they've ever done that, as far as for this season. Mm-hmm. And so it was something that was obviously super important for him to be at. And so I think we have to think through it, again, not from a legalistic standpoint, and we say, okay, what is our heart? Our hearts are, we want to honor the Lord, we want to follow him, but we don't want to be legalistic that we have to, think that every person has to do everything. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Because I struggle some in my own mind, and I know you were raised a preacher's kid just like I was, and I don't know how your upbringing was, but mine, it was almost the expectation, because I was a preacher's kid, that I was there every time the doors were open. And if there were things that conflicted with church, I had to miss out on those things, because in some way, I don't know that my dad told me this at the time, but looking back, I feel this way. It was like, well, we're worried about what everybody else is going to think of us if you're not there. And I don't know, I do feel like that pressure is on pastors and maybe other church leaders too, because you want to set an example. You kind of worry about that stuff. But at the same time, I mean, that extended beyond that too. But at the same time, I think it's important for us to set the example of, of not being legalistic and also truly prioritizing God at the same time. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a difficult thing for sure. It's a hard question, but I think that this really ties with the same principle as when we're talking about money too. It's really about stepping back and not just talking with yourself, but even talking in that situation, you're talking about your family, just talking with everybody about what the priorities are of this activity or their hobby or what you're doing as a family, and kind of talking about why you're making the decisions that you're making, right? Like just talking about with your child of like, I'm going to start putting you in music class, right? You're going to get these music lessons, and talking with, well, I want you in this music class so that you can, one, enjoy music, because God created music for us to enjoy and to glorify Him with. And I want you to grow with it, and it's teaching you hard work and practice and setting those expectations for what it's for, versus maybe if it goes unsaid, or maybe it is a priority of, I'm going to put you so you become a music prodigy, and it becomes like all about propping your child up. This is just a random example, but like just talking about with sports or with other hobbies or activities and stuff, why are we doing this? And when these conflicts happen, we can say, well, our priority is the Lord right here, but we have this kind of one-time thing that's coming up, or occasional thing, and we're going to miss it because we want you to excel at this thing. We want you to be a part of this activity, but we just want to say first, this is why we're making this decision, but our default is honoring the Lord. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes when families don't have clear expectations, that's when drift happens. That's when the default comes to, well, this activity has something coming up, so church goes and we're doing that because they haven't thought through or talked about or said what happens when there's a conflict. Naturally, those things that honestly can be more demanding than church sometimes. We're saying, like, if you miss this, then you're out of the hobby or out of the team, off the team or something. Well, church shows a little bit more grace. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, and again, we have to remember our loyalty to the Lord and our worship of the Lord extends beyond church, but certainly it has to include church, because we see in Scripture, the command to not neglect gathering together, and the fact that Christ was the one who established the church. And even though we can look around and say, okay, the church has its issues, the reason it has its issues is because it's flawed people trying to do something that God wants us to do, and sometimes people in general don't do it well. But that being said, we're still called to prioritize that. We're also talking about our regular time with the Lord in His Word, in prayer, leading our families in that way. If you think about just in general, and I like the principle you brought up, like how everything that we do can be worship of the Lord if we do it to honor Him and glorify Him in what we do, whether that's sports or whatever, hobbies, talents we have. And part of that is how we steward well what God has given us, right? If we're good at the piano, we don't say, well, I'm not going to do this anymore because it takes away time that I could be reading my Bible. We prioritize time to read our Bible, but we say, how can we take what we're doing and bring honor to the Lord in what we do? So I don't know. I think, again, I don't want to give a cookie cutter model and say, like, this is what your family needs to do or whatever. These are some things that you need to think through. A situation that we got into the last couple years was with All-Stars for baseball. Jack had made the All-Star team for the local Little League here or whatever, Cal Ripken. And the requirement for that was going to involve some Sundays. And for me, just thinking back, growing up as a preacher's kid, again, just knowing and feeling like, man, I missed out on some things because of almost like a requirement or an expectation that I had to do something all the time, like, be at church every time the doors were open. I felt like for me, in making a parenting decision, how I thought about it, it was like 2 or 3 Sundays that it was involved in the summer. And I just thought, like those 2 or 3 Sundays in the grand scheme of things, because we do go to church so much, he's ultimately probably not going to remember those 2 or 3 Sundays, but he is going to remember if I tell him that he can't play All-Stars because of this demand that I have on him. And so naturally, though, if it leans into the place of where I'm saying that all the time, like, well, okay, we'll do it again this Sunday or do it again that Sunday. And then it becomes to a place that now I'm no longer prioritizing the things of the Lord, but I'm making my son the priority or his desires the priority. That becomes the issue. And so you just kind of got to think through like how you handle that, because at the end of the day, what I don't want my son to do or any of my kids is at the end of, when they become adults or at the end of their life, be able to look back and remember, man, I have all these great memories playing baseball and remember all this stuff, but they don't know the things of God because we prioritize that over the things of the Lord. And so I think it was Vodi Bakum that has the quote that says, if I teach my kid to keep his eye on the ball but failed to teach him to keep his eye on Christ, I failed as a father. And to me, that's a super powerful reminder of what our priorities should be. And again, we don't have to be legalistic with it, but we do need to really ask ourselves in our hearts and with our actions, like, what are we saying is our priority? If somebody just assessed all of that. So we have to think through that and really always keep our motives in check. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, just one more thought on that is working with students often, and we have a lot of athletes. I will say, and not just, I've done this almost a decade at this point, where I've seen where just the importance, once again, of parents to just talk about these priorities and even share their decision-making with these young students. Because if you don't share with why you're making these decisions and your thoughts behind it and your priorities, they will interpret your actions themselves. And sometimes, even if your priority is for the Lord, if you don't talk to them about it and let them make their own interpretation, they might come to see some of these things as a higher priority, even when you didn't intend them to see them that way, because you all didn't have the conversation about it.
Yeah, and I think that, for example, when I was talking about my childhood, that's my interpretation of it. I don't remember ever really having a conversation. Now, my mom might listen to this podcast and call me and be like, no, we didn't do that. And she might fuss at me. But, that being said, like, that was my view of it. That's my interpretation of it because, I know that we had the conversations about prioritizing the Lord, but at the same time, I felt like there was pressure there based on like, okay, what are people going to think if we miss church or whatever? I don't think that pressure is there as much now, like as far as I don't feel that pressure on my family like I did when I was a kid. And I think some of that is just how like times have changed and people have realized like, okay, we have been legalistic about things in the church, whether it's that or something else. And it's more about the heart. But if the heart, I'll just reiterate this, if the heart desires Christ and to grow in Christ's likeness, then we will prioritize the things of Christ. It won't be, well, we're going to make this a priority because of what people might think or because of any other reason. We're going to make this a priority because we desire to honor the Lord with what we're doing. So the last couple of verses, and we'll kind of wrap up with just a little bit of discussion on this because we've already talked about this in some ways. But I mentioned to be rich toward God, we're to live generously. He says, sell your possessions, give your money to the poor, make money bags for yourselves that won't grow old, an inexhaustible treasure in heaven where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. So in other words, the more we're generous here, the more we get these heavenly rewards and treasures in heaven, which ultimately create eternal rewards, being rich toward God, those kind of things. And these kind of things shouldn't, they won't ever go away. And so the more we prioritize the things of God, and the less we prioritize, the here and now, we find this amazing reward. And so one of the things I mentioned Sunday is how sometimes when we think about living generously, sometimes we almost like make bargains with God. And in other words, like, well, I'll give my time, but not my money. And so to make up for me not giving money, I'm going to give more of my time. Or I'm going to give my money and not my time. And to make up for, not giving time, I'm going to give more money. I think we've all know of churches who feel like they want to pay to send missionaries, but they never want to do mission work themselves. I'll say this. Part of stewardship is, again, stewarding what we have. And some of that is stewarding, like, for instance, our physical bodies, the abilities we have physically. You might be at an age where you can do a lot of hands-on mission work. You might be at an age where you feel like physically, I can barely get out of a chair. How am I going to do anything else other than give money? We do what we can with what we have. And some of this, I think, also is we need to think creatively about what we have. I think sometimes we get so in a box that, for instance, one of the blessings that and encouragements that I've had over the years is when people have sent me cards just encouraging me. And a lot of times, I think just because of how our generation is, a lot of times those cards I receive are from senior adults because that's kind of how they grew up, was doing that. We might send a text message to each other to encourage each other as far as our generation goes. But that's something that you can think about, hey, I might not be able to physically get up and do anything, but I could maybe write a card to somebody, maybe make a phone call, maybe do some other things to serve and give to other people. So in thinking about all of that, I think that's important. But again, I've literally heard of people saying, okay, well, I volunteered to do certain work for a church that I would have billed that church normally this amount of money. And so because I didn't bill them, that's going to count as a tithe, or that's going to count as my offering. And I'm not going to give any money. I'm just going to give time. And to me, that's in some ways it's indicative of where our hearts are and what we find as important. And to be honest, if we've got that much time to give and we're holding on to our money that tightly, it probably shows that not only do we prioritize that, but we're not actually in being generous, if you will, we're not actually being sacrificial in that, because we've got an abundance of time maybe, but we feel like we don't have an abundance of money, so there's no sacrifice there. Or on the flip side, maybe we've got an abundance of money, but because we get that money maybe through working 80 hours a week, our time is so limited. And so we think, well, I'm just going to give tons of money to make up for not giving any time in serving the Lord. And I don't know, what are your thoughts there? How do we balance that a little bit better? And we'll kind of wrap up with this question.
I think it's really that word that you use, sacrifice, is giving what we have and sacrificing in that. One of the most powerful stories in the Bible to me that I think about often is that widow that dropped the mite, or the one coin that she had left, and it was, I don't know, I've heard the math before, but basically a penny or something like that. and the Pharisees around there were dropping all this money in, and people were marveling at that. But Jesus marvels at that widow giving what she had. She sacrificed what she had. And I think when we talk about being generous, I think we have to give sacrificially. We have to give sacrificially because it's a showing of faith that God, you gave this to me, and I'm going to give this to you and trust that you're going to provide for my needs and use it. And because you sacrificed everything for me, all I can give is this sacrificially. And sometimes it's like you said, sacrificing with time, and sometimes it's sacrificing with money. But we see that the Bible does tell us to consistently sacrifice both, that we're supposed to serve others. We're supposed to give generously. And it's about the heart. Being consistently generous to me is not even about the amount. It's about the act and the heart. I think some people hear that and think that they have to give a ton for it to make an impact. And just like that widow just gave a little bit what she had, you can be generous to somebody and make a huge impact by, like you said, just maybe just bringing them a cup of coffee when they really need it, or taking them out to lunch and just listening to them and talking to them, or letting them know that you're thinking about them, or it doesn't have to be this big grand gesture, but a lot of being generous is just letting people know that you love and care about them and that you're thinking about them. And that's kind of kicks off with our Random Acts of Kindness month that we're doing. It doesn't have to be these big grand gestures, but just looking around and letting people know, hey, I see you, I care about you, and Jesus cares about you as well.
Yeah, and as you think about following the Lord and what that looks like in your life, certainly it requires sacrifice and living generously. But also, if you're at a place that you feel like, hey, like for instance, I don't have any time to give because I'm working 80 hours a week or whatever. I think there's part of it that to say, okay, to follow the Lord and to do what he tells us to do, he talks about the importance of Sabbath and rest and spending time, serving him and the importance of being with our family and all of that. And so maybe for you to follow the Lord and to have the time to serve or to rest or the other things that you need to cut back on some of that. And that might mean that you have less money, but it might mean that, that you're able to follow the Lord in other ways as well. On the flip side, if we have, let's just say, more money than time, if you will, or more time than money, excuse me, then, as we think about giving, you might feel like, well, I don't have a lot to give or whatever. But asking, okay, what does it look like to sacrificially give of our money, even though comparatively in what we have, it might not be as much as far as a dollar amount, kind of the example that you gave. But again, it's about the heart, and that's what God looks at. And so, I've literally had people, like I mentioned Sunday, like that I've counseled new Christians, newly married couples who feel like, well, I can't give anything. My money's so tight or whatever, or I have so little. And it's just about praying through that and saying, okay, what does this look like to sacrifice? What does it look like to prioritize the things of God? I don't want to neglect my family. I don't want to get a situation where we don't have any food or something like that. But at the same time, I'm trusting God as the provider. And so that's just, again, there's not a cookie cutter thing to say, okay, you should do this or what, so you got to pray through that and think through that. But as you're doing that, let me just say, for every person, if you are praying through that and want somebody to talk to or whatever, we're here to help you think through, okay, what does it look like to serve? What does it look like to give? What does it look like to prioritize the Lord in your life and all of that? And again, as pastors, I'll say this, I mentioned this Sunday to some folks after church. It's sometimes weird to talk about money as a pastor because there has been, especially what you see on TV and stuff, a lot of greed from pastors, a lot of greed in some churches, and we don't ever want to operate from that place. But we do see this as a command from the Lord. And so to fail to talk about this is to fail to talk about what God expects of us. And so it is important to consider, and I hope you'll pray through that and think through that. Hey, let me mention, if you don't have a place to worship or to serve or anything like that, we'd love to have you get connected here at Beacon Hill. Our goal here is not to just be like a church that we come together and have services and things like that. Ultimately, our goal is to connect you with the Lord and help you grow in your faith. And so any way we can do that, we'd love to help you in that. We have groups on Sunday morning at 9:15. We have church at worship at 10:30 on Sunday mornings, and we'd love to see you this Sunday if you don't have a place to connect. Joel, it's been fun, man.
Thanks for being generous with your time today, GJ.
Well, I'll say if you ever come along, like as far as like if you ever get to a place that I know you're going to have like a big windfall or an inheritance or something like that, or like, you're walking down the street and find $1,000 and you're wanting to be generous. I mean, I know how you might spend it on me.
Yeah, and only you.
Yeah. So, but I'll do the same, man. If I find it. Now, I'll say I don't like the idea of bolstering the Louisville Cardinal economy, contributing to the NIL or whatever it goes to.
Sure.
But I would do that for you, man.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
You're a good guy.
Yeah. We'll end on that note. You guys have a great week.